My guest on the podcast, yet another Denver. I don't know. We have a lot of Denver people on it. So like, this is a new fun trend. And Josh and I'm going to introduce you to Josh in a minute. Josh is not going to be the person who's going to talk to us about how he's going to do something really insane with his body, like a couple of episodes ago, climbing a bunch of mountains in a very short amount of time. But Josh Fuller is a former creative director. He's a founder and he's a tech entrepreneur amongst a bunch of other things. We're going to get to know him really well here today. Josh, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, good morning, Jason. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm lucky if I make it to the Peloton. So I'm not going to be doing any 14ers.
He's also funny. I like it. Yeah, like you make it to the Peloton. That's great. Well, Josh had pointed this out. You're the third person in a row that's been from Denver. And that is just random because I have people from all over the world that I interview on the show. But I'm like, oh yeah, Matt's in Denver. By the way, congratulations if you're an NBA fan on number 1 seed in the Western Conference. You may be playing my Minnesota Timberwolves, who will just get their butts kicked.
We'll see. It's looking good. It's looking good.
It is looking good.
I'm not a close fan, but everybody around me says that the Nuggets are one of the best. So, and having
they are the number 1 seed in the West today. Yeah, or as of today, I believe, here at the end or middle of April. Well, Josh, we're going to get to know you over the next hour or so. So let's get right into it. What's something you nerd out about?
Probably music. I like knowing nuanced facts about, and not just all music. I wish I could do it about all music, but no, it's I'm Gen X. For me, it's the Beastie Boys or the Scar Tissue is a phenomenal book about Anthony Kiedis. So there's a particular genre of useless information I like to keep in my head about that stuff.
You and I will be fast friends. I'm a big music person. I've shared this on the podcast. Big Beastie, but we might be about the same age. I'm a big Beasties fan. I was listening to a podcast, the Stuff You Should Know podcast, and they did an episode it was Armchair. It was Flightless Bird, which is Dax Shepard's offshoot, where they go and they talk about interesting things in America. And they were doing a thing on eggs and why Americans put their eggs in a refrigerator, and they used Eggman, the Beastie Boys song, in the episode. I'm like, oh yeah, that's so good.
Really?
So love good. That. I'm also a music trivia nerd. So I don't know if you know this or if you use the site Song Facts, but it's really an obsession of mine. Have you ever used it before?
No. I'm going to make a note of it right now, though.
Yeah. If you like music trivia or really the intention of Song Facts, and no, this episode's not sponsored by Song Facts, although I'm sure I'd be open to that. But what it is it's you can think of it as a Wikipedia for songs and bands, but all of the information is based on interviews they did. So if you have a song you really like and you're like, hey, where did these lyrics come from? What was the inspiration? You can go and it'll have collected all these articles, like for example, like Layla. I'm just using that as an example. You can go and go, oh, like this is when Eric wrote it. It's about, obviously most people know it's about George Harrison's wife. Here's what happened. Right. And like, they'll give you the history, but it's all based on the things the artist has said. So it's not us speculating, which is really interesting.
Oh, I love that.
It's really
Hey Jude
interesting.
Do you know the Hey Jude one?
But yeah, it was written by Paul for Julian. Yeah. Julian Lennon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Written for Julian Lennon. Yep.
Really.
Because he was going through a divorce, right?
Julian was quite young. It was, I think, more of a concern that he, from an outside looking in, John maybe wasn't as present as Julian might have needed in some views. And he wrote it as like, it's going to be okay. So
take
he was really nervous
and make it better.
John, as they say. I wasn't in the studio, sadly, but I read about it.
You weren't in the studio with them. That would be quite the feat. I don't know. This is the third time that music's come up in my last 3 recordings. I maybe should do a third podcast and just I would just love to geek out with people on music. I've had a few musicians on the show. It's so fun. There's never ending things to talk about regarding music.
Yeah, I considered my other obsession might be vintage skateboard art. So I kind of I geek out on some nuanced stuff for sure.
That's cool, man. Yeah, that's something I know absolutely nothing about other than I've seen it. I wouldn't know anything about that part of it. Are you a musician yourself?
Once upon a time, I played bass in some local bands.
Mm-hmm.
the closest I got to anything normal is before Nate Ratcliffe made it, with Nate Ratcliffe and the Nathaniel Ratcliffe and the Night Sweats.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a band called Born in a Flood, and my band opened for his band in a Boulder venue, and
There
we
you go.
really
It's
we
cool.
really set the stage for them to do well because we did okay. We didn't do great. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I still
You
goof off.
you that's
I
cool.
jam with my 7-year-old now. She plays the piano, I play the bass. So
Oh man. Yeah, no, so you have a 7-year-old as well?
I do. I have a little girl.
I have a 7-year-old girl as well. Look at this. Like, I think Josh and I were meeting our doppelgangers on a podcast.
I
This is cool.
love it.
My last thing I'll say on this, my daughter is not much of a musician, but my 2-year-old, I've turned him into a deadhead already, and it is one of the great joys in my life. I'm a big deadhead,
Amazing.
and he'll say, "Daddy, want to listen to Shakedown Street?" And I'll be like, "This is parenting winning. This is parenting
Oh,
winning."
it's so great.
Although his favorite song is Casey Jones, and if you know the second line of that song, it's not really that appropriate for a 2-year-old to say, but he does it anyway. And I'm like, you know what? We're all gonna be okay.
I mean,
Oh
my
man,
my kid knows how to get to my happy zone quick. She listens to a lot of movie soundtracks, and Matilda is a big one right now for her. She has this photographic memory. She hears it once or twice and could just walk around singing every word. It's really weird and quite impressive. And but when she wants to do something for me, she'll tell Alexa to play Beastie Boys, with coming full circle. And some of those lyrics may not be
perfect.
appropriate, but you
No,
know,
no,
I
no,
skip
no. I
those
could
songs.
say that there. Yeah, yeah. There you go. That's awesome. Well, Josh, what's something that's inside of your comfort zone that you know is outside of somebody else's comfort zone?
I think just meeting strangers and talking about, let's dig into things. I've, many people have, we all, I think, have our walls or our levels at a certain point that begin to, as comfort increases, those levels decrease. I sort of start there in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I don't generally come too postured. I sort of like kind of showing an authentic side. I for good or bad, I've done that, and yeah, it's opened me up to a lot of relationships. So I think
Mm.
that's something that I've and I'm very keenly aware of it when it's not being reciprocated in an early conversation. And I haven't mastered always breaking through the shell, but usually can get there. But
Mm.
humor helps.
Yeah, humor helps and authenticity. Man, I feel like we're going to continue to go down the line, and I'm going to go. You literally, I could be interviewing myself right now. Same thing. That's my wife interviewed me for the show, and that was I was like, I can walk into a room and know nobody and just go talk to people, and I have no fear of it, and do it in a
That's
way that's like not networking, just for fun.
See, I could learn that from you because I can do it the
Mm,
moment there's been an eye contact or if there's a reason to be talking. So if I show up to a call like this where I just meeting you and I'm
yeah.
very comfortable going to an event or a room with several people that we're all there to talk. I'm typically not the icebreaker unless somebody, spills a drink and I make a joke and then I can get in. But I can't just go and go, "Hey, I'm Josh. What's up?" Like that's
Yeah.
terrifying. so
Yeah.
I could learn from
Yeah.
you probably.
There you go. Well, I don't know about that, but maybe, or maybe I'm just a little crazy. Who knows? Maybe it's somewhere in between. What's something on the other side of that coin? Something that's other people are like, hey, that's cool with me, whatever, and you're just like, nah, that's way out. That's something way outside my comfort zone. I'm just not going to do, or I don't want to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Oh God, there's a lot of things there. I mean, the athletics we just talked about. There's, I do live in Denver. There's a lot of people moving here and the people that live here. The most common response you'll hear is the weather and the outdoors and the access to the mountains. And I've not for schedule purposes, a little for health, and then ultimately for choosing priorities. I haven't made it up to snowboard in over 2 years.
Mm.
So I think that's something where I wish I valued it so much that it was the thing that doesn't get left behind. And I'm working. I do like tennis. Since becoming a dad, it's very hard to say every Wednesday I'll be here. So tennis leagues
Yeah.
have been out
Yeah.
for a few years now. But no, I think that's a big one that I it's just all around me, and I'm constantly aware that I wish I could like my friend. He's about to celebrate a milestone birthday. He's planning this big scuba trip across the country or across the world that he's going to go do for 9 days, to eight all these different dives and certifications. And he's so excited, and he's shopping and training and reading and working out now. And this is in 3 months. And I'm like, oh, I so appreciate your passion behind this, and I can't identify with it at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that
Yeah.
makes
That's
so. I think people seeing bigger pictures, maybe I'm a little too close to what I'm working on or what I'm thinking about in that moment, and rarely is it something
yeah.
that's going to be the potentially life changing just experience. There's no business out of that. There's no
Yeah.
takeaway. He's not going to become a professional scuba diver after all this work. It's just to have that experience for those few days in July. And I love his passion. But I don't know how to have that for myself very often. So that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
You mentioned tennis, so I just want to ask before we move to the next question: Is have you all been swept up by the pickleball craze in Denver yet?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
We're
fake
out we're out
tennis.
on the we're out on the East Coast, and like at the Jersey Shore, it's there's fights now because there's people will go to play pickleball and they're like, no, this is not a pickleball court, it's a tennis court because you can make it's like a
Yep.
it's a huge thing out here. I'm assuming
I've
it's swept up out there as well.
It's very big. There's noise ordinance that's gone to local government for
Oh
how late you can
man.
play, because it's such a it's using formerly fairly quiet. And tennis is it makes a ding, but it's not a pickleball ding. Yeah, no, and I hope I don't make enemies calling it fake tennis. That's my joke for it. I've actually played a few times, and it's a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
get why people want to do it. My partner, she wants to do it. I bought her a tennis racket years ago. It's never been used, but with pickleball, I think I have a chance of getting her on a court, so that could be cool.
Yeah, it's fun. I
Yeah,
mean, I played it. It's definitely a fun. It's definitely fun.
super fun.
I like it,
Yeah.
and I'm a tennis player as well, and I do like pickleball, and it's just a lower. Yeah, like you can go out with your 7-year-old and play. Playing tennis with my 7-year-old is not going to be that fun because it's just
Oh, I started her at 5. She did lessons last year. I mean, at that level, she's not showing prodigy level signs yet, but she's showing a lot of passion. She's always,
yeah,
can we go play tennis? And it's been a hard winter because we've had a lot of snow this year
yeah,
and a lot of cold. And even if it's, not snowing every day, the snow wasn't melting very quickly. So
yep,
yeah, she's way out of practice on it, but we're getting her, it's 80 this week. So
yep,
it's time. The lessons are going to start up again. Hopefully this is the year.
yeah. It's cool, man. So, excuse me. If I give you 5 minutes and you were able to have a platform to the world, talk for 5 minutes to all of us out here in the world about anything that you'd want to, what is it that you'd want to speak to us on, and what would you want us to do at the end of your speech?
That is a tall question.
Yes, it is. That's why I ask it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, okay, I'll avoid topical, like political. From my point of view, from my corner of the world, which is, I run a digital agency, kind of a brand consultancy, multidisciplinary type deal. I think I would probably want to, talk to that, and both, kind of from two lenses of from founding it and building it, and all, yeah, where we've had some success and what we're doing with clients that we think is a little bit different. So is that where I should head? Is that a good
Sure.
good direction for that answer, or should
Yeah,
I pick
absolutely.
or
Whatever,
both?
whatever. Like that's the point of the question
Yeah, of
is I'm like
course.
I'm unattached to what you say. And that's why I'm
Yeah, fair
curious what you would
enough.
like to talk about. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So just from my background and my view of it, I've done everything wrong you can do. I've been at it for 25 years. I started an agency with no experience in my early 20s, and I ran it for 9 years. I created what I would call a really good job for myself. I had some great clients.
Mm,
I learned a tremendous amount of skills. I had a few employees, but never hit any kind of point of inflection of growth. Our client engagements were smaller, but it it was better than the alternative, because at the time the dot com boom had just sort of wiped out any ambitions of getting cool agency jobs in those couple of years that were important and vital to me. So I chose the path of starting something, and it taught me how to deal with a lot of different people. I had to go start networking and just, so I think the just starting thing was kind of cool. But I made every mistake you can make. So I learned by doing it wrong first. Then I joined a larger agency after 9 years. I thought, I'm 30, it's time. I'm either going to learn how they do this in a bigger system, or I'm never going to learn it. And I'm always going to be just as good as I am today. And that was a phenomenal experience. I was lucky enough to be a CD and build out a creative UX practice at a already very successful digital agency here in Denver. At the time, it was Denver's largest, until 4 or 5 years after that, Deloitte started moving into digital space. They formed a studio model called Deloitte Digital. I was fortunate enough to go there. I took a salary decrease or a title decrease to do that as well.
The agency you're with was absorbed by Deloitte, or you left and went to Deloitte?
I left and went to Deloitte. And that context was just, all of a sudden there's thousands and thousands of colleagues, accessible colleagues and subject matter experts. And the world just opened up. And case in point, after 3.5 years doing well and really enjoying the Denver studio and kind of doing some travel and a lot of client engagements, I was able to move into the Netherlands for a year and kind of help that studio practice get up. It was going, but I sort of had the hands-on. I'd been in a studio for years, so it was like, we're doing things, but here's some things we should be considering doing differently to kind of emulate some of those successful tactics. And then I didn't want to be a Deloitter forever, so I got asked to.
You weren't heading to the partner track at some point?
I mean, it didn't seem likely. No, it didn't seem likely. And there is an up and out, and I was still on the up. I'd actually been promoted to studio lead 2 weeks before I made the decision not to accept, or to sort of reverse my acceptance and come back to the States, where I joined. I was employee 0 or 1. I don't know what it's called, but I was the first employee hired for a genomics startup, an app startup, tech play. We had 9 people, and in a year we built this app and a couple of apps in genomics world, and we were acquired. So it was a really rapid, massive shift from focusing on a lot of problems and opportunities and personalities and every resource you need, you've got support on, to getting really hyper scrappy again. And then, seeing it work was also really fun. But, coming full circle to agency, I mean, I think I leveraged that experience. I started Matic in 21. So the reason that background is part of my answer is, what do we do different? And I think we do bring this sense, luckily from some of my shared experiences, but 2 of my employees, my CTO is from the software agency pre-Deloitte, and my studio lead is from Deloitte. So we're building on this precipice that we're small, we're scrappy, we love startup, but we also can play at the level of what we learned when you're dealing with a massive global capability. And it helps us know where we can live and breathe in the client ecosystem, because there's rarely, just one shop doing support or building product or building brand. There's usually a lot of collaborative work. And so we play really well with agency partners, with PR partners, marketing partners, and internal teams. And I think, I think it would be really hard to come at this from, we are pure agency and just full stop. I think those experiences are what kind of allow us to be pretty elastic in our approach to client engagement.
That's cool, Josh. Before we go to a really brief break, I wanted to ask you something around your journey. So you went from founder, owner, small business, to working in a larger agency, to going to a massive, massive organization. And I know, like, when in a big 4, but in a big 4, you're in your own not little, or maybe not so little, you're in the practice though. So it's not like you're not talking to people about accounting and tax law. Like, you're doing your thing inside of that. And then from there, you went out and did your own thing again. You said I made every mistake in the book previously. I'm really interested in what you've done well. And the reason I asked that, Josh, is because every entrepreneur I've ever read, they're like, oh my gosh, I've made so many mistakes. And if people ask me, I'm like, here's all the things I've done wrong. I want to go to the commercial break. Like, what are a few of the things that you've done well that anybody listening with this similar path might go, hey, like that's an idea for me. What are some stuff you've done well? Other than be funny and like music, which is already, already two big things for me.
Those are huge.
Those are huge. Likable, funny, and you could talk about music. Like that's a automatic level up.
I'm stubborn. I dig in, and there's kind of a, never say quit, which could also fall into the mistake side, but I'm going to call it out as something that I've done well. Just having kind of a perseverance. I think this comes from maybe an interesting childhood and kind of a bounce around childhood that I had. It just sort of taught like a bit of perseverance. And that's been, that's what anybody who's getting into it, I try not to go, it's going to be really hard, blah, blah, blah. It's more like, let's talk about moments they can draw from in their lives that they've been able to overcome or push through something that was challenging. And Matic put that to the test in its first 6 months in a massive, massive way. So I think that's number one. Now there's a few others that are probably right there in parallel, like, trusting the people you work with. You're essentially always hiring, wherever you start, at least in this world. I had a really good permalance practice last year. This year, I feel like we have an agency.
Yeah.
And I say that because I had one kind of back office, helped with everything employee. And then I was either quarterbacking or coaching all the work through an independent contractor network. And that was phenomenal, and owned all the client relationships. And this year it's been and it is a transformation to be able to transition client expectations from call Josh to call Matic. It's a different conversation. And I think that to get there, it's finding amazing people and letting them be who they are, and not, trusting that they're going to find ways to improve what you build if you let them. It may not look like that day one, but by day 30 it should.
Yeah.
If you collaborate. So I think a couple of those things are just important for any founder to consider, being in it, like kind of putting out of your head what else you could be doing. If you start thinking too much about on a hard day, what else you could be doing, maybe you're doing the wrong thing. And that's a real question. But if you're in it and you love it, and I think after just at this stage in life, I sort of know what I'm pointing at. There is a all in kind of chips on the table that I think once you've made the decision to go, and it's okay to straddle half in, half out, but that's probably going to be more permalance and less, or kind of like you've created a job for yourself versus creating a company. But once you've created a company, I think that all in mentality is what's going to produce the result you're looking for. And, your employees and your team, they're going to share in that with you if you invite them on the journey.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Josh. I think that's the first time I've asked that question of a founder on this podcast. I just kind of made it up. I'm like, oh, like the typical thing is like, oh, what are all the mistakes you made that we can learn from? Like, no, like what are the things that you've done well? So I might incorporate that into more when I talk to people that are entrepreneurs and founders of various businesses. So thanks, Josh. Really appreciate what you brought to us so far. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be right back.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
Cool.
All right, Josh, we're back. So now is the time when you get to ask me something. And we just met a little more than 30 minutes ago. and you can ask me whatever you want. I have no idea what's coming here, and I'll answer it for you and for everybody listening. So what would you like me to answer?
Oh, wow. This is great. I feel like I've got the power here, but
You do.
I am gonna
sort of. I can always pause the recording, so like a little bit. I'm kidding.
You've got production rights for sure.
I've got production rights. I'm like, well, like our internet just went out. If you get a question, I'm like, oh yeah, we're having technology problems. What?
No, I think you get to meet with a lot of people in this, and of course, I want to say like, what got you wanting to do a podcast? But I'm going to refrain from that one. I feel like that's a bit of a softball, and I'm going to say
that's a softball that I've been asked. That's the number one question I've been asked here by guests for sure. And it's a great question, but I've answered it a lot. Yeah.
I think I have, more of a two-part. You've been at this a while. So I guess question A into question B is, kind of a where do you see it going? And like in terms of just North Star vision, and what are you finding in your guests? Because every guest experience is a learning experience, I would imagine, just like every client experience is one for Matic. So kind of what are the things you're learning that are going to help you get to your blue sky?
Yeah. Nobody's ever asked me either of those. I love it. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
I like to be really honest when I answer these questions on this podcast. I don't really have a vision for this podcast. That's the truth. And the reason is I do it for fun. Anybody who podcasts and like, hey, I want to be the next Joe Rogan or Dax Shepard or Mark Maron or How I Built This, the economics to have a profitable podcast is it's improbable at this point. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but if I was going to go, oh, Josh, and you were my client, I do brand strategy for people. Part of what I do is you're like, oh, you know what, Jason, I'm going to start a podcast. We're going to talk about digital marketing. I'd go, cool. It's got to just be for like brand equity and for just getting out there, because I can show you 100 or 200 or potentially 1,000 other podcasts who probably talk about the same things. So the idea that, and you have not said this, so I'm just using it as an example, long form interview show, people have a million arguably maybe not a million, but a lot of choices. So my vision for this show is just to continue to ride it how it's going, actually, which is a really nice place to be, because I'm pretty type A, formerly a salesperson. What's next? And this is one of the areas in my business and in my life that I'm just like, I just like doing it. I'm excited to talk to this guy, Josh, see what we create together. Excited to have the number of people listen that are going to listen, and what's next. So that's the honest answer. The honest answer is the vision is it's kind of already created how I want it to be. Now, of course, if songfacts.com or Matic wants to sponsor and give me a 5-figure sponsorship, I'm not opposed to it, but it's certainly not my North Star or vision for this podcast. I have a business podcast that I'm doing some investment in to potentially grow it, because it's more of a it's a tech focused podcast. I know I mentioned that to you.
Yeah.
Give me the second question again. Oh, what have I learned from my guests that I can, like, what have I learned? What can I utilize in my own thing?
Yeah.
Well, excuse me. I learn a lot. I'm a learner. I'm a very curious, and I'm a curious person. I like to learn from people. And I'm also a coach, like an executive coach for tech, which is interesting. So I didn't know you had a tech background for reading your bio. So it's interesting because there's arguably no better way to learn about humanity than to interview people. So if I think about the things that I've learned, or I when I hear that, I think about the themes that I've learned about, because just like you as a business owner, I do things in a specific niche for the most part. Just like you're going to be I don't know if you're niched out, but like you're going to be doing pretty specific work with specific types of people. This podcast, if you look at the list of people that I've interviewed in the last 3 months, it's wildly different.
Yeah.
So what I've learned, and some themes are, one, people generally would much rather just have a conversation than go on and be interviewed on like their stuff, which is fascinating to me. And you said this earlier. It's like, oh, let's just have a conversation. Because and this podcast is in year 4, so I've learned this, but it's much the feedback I get from my guest is generally, I'd rather just come and have a fun conversation. We'll generate something versus the kind of like the Tonight Show format, which is completely formatted, right? It's like, oh, what are the three things? Josh is on he's on a movie tour. What are the four questions you're going to ask Josh? Which is entertaining and fun because the people are fun. But it really surprised me because I always had this thing of like, oh, people like to promote themselves and self-promoting, but it actually makes me like heat people even better. So like, oh, like I'll talk about my business, but it's just part of what I want to talk about, et cetera, et cetera. Super
Yeah.
cool. Some of the other themes are resiliency and the ability for people to bounce back or why they do what they do. So for example, we were mentioning the podcast guest I had on, Drew Francis, a few episodes, another Denver. He's the 14Ker. The reason he does this and the reason he is an endurance athlete is because his mother's an endurance athlete and she got cancer, and pretty sure that's what saved her life because her body was in such good shape that when she got a very serious form of cancer, she was able to fight it off and do chemo and all the things. And it's just really fascinating to hear why people do what they do outside of, and I say this as somebody who grew up, it's like, oh, you did things so you would make money and support your family. You're like, and now the world is so open to the different things that we all can do and make money. And I'm just like really fascinated and inspired by the fact, like, why does this person do this thing? Oh, like they're at Deloitte. Why'd they leave Deloitte? Oh, because they wanted to have more freedom and autonomy to be with their family, or they had a calling. And so like, that's the last thing I'll say is I do have more entrepreneurs than not on here. And that's because entrepreneurs like to go on podcasts because personal brand matters. Doesn't really matter if you have a big personal brand, in my opinion, if you're a middle manager at a big company. Like your personal brand matters inside of the company, but less so for us out here. The other thing I'll say is that what I've learned is the stories about what we do is arguably as important or more important than what we do to most people. What we do and do we do it well, and we are a good partner, are we a good coach, are we a good agency, is important to our clients. But if they're not going to be our clients, what's more important is like our why than our how or our what. It's been and it goes back to my first answer. That's why it's so fun. It's like, oh, I don't know. And especially you show up, like you and I just met. I interviewed somebody else last week that I've known for 4 years and I know her very well. And yet there's all these common themes and through lines in what most people's life. It also makes me, the last thing I'll say is it gives me how alike we all are. Like some of us are more alike, like you and I, like 7-year-old daughters and we love music and this, but even when you interview somebody that's just wildly different, at the core, people are pretty similar. And it's really cool. It's really an inspiring way to interact with people and to learn. And I could point at every single episode I've done. I think this will be my 175th recording at this point. I could say like, I learned that from that person, that from that person, that from that person. And I'm going to say this publicly here because my coach has been inspiring me. I kind of want to do a book of all the guests I've interviewed so far with like a 1-pager on like what I learned from them. I think that would be a cool little project because I already have all the transcripts. So it's not that hard to pull together at some point. I just need to do it. I think that'd be fun.
Diary of a podcaster.
Diary of a podcaster. There you go. It's almost like you're a marketing or branding or like a creative director or something. Diary of a podcaster. I love it. Man, that might be coming. That is probably my title.
I mean, if it's not taken, by all means, take it.
That's cool.
That's an awesome answer, man. That's
Thanks,
really,
dude.
really insightful. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Josh. What are you passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a ton. Obviously, the basics that we all, as parents, probably are. But for the context of this, outside of music, I really love how art and business are they all share this one thing, and it kind of goes into what you just said. It's all human. It's all just us and how we interpret or how we wish to be interpreted. Whether you're Nike setting perceptions amongst millions of consumers globally, or you're the writers of Succession sadly killing off major characters.
Hold on.
Didn't say who. And you can produce me out. But
I'm kidding. I read an article about it. I'm actually not caught up, and they referenced my all-time favorite human as the code word for it, and I'm like, oh well, that makes sense.
It was on Colbert 3 nights ago, so I figure we're okay.
yeah.
But yeah, it's those That's just a really impactful show, the way it spotlights, even at kind of any level, humanity, and the denial of addressing certain things is really interesting to me. But anyways, not to make this a podcast about Succession. They already have one, I
Well,
think.
but again, I'll say it again. If Max, it used to be HBO Max, now they're renaming it Max in May.
Yeah.
If Max would like to be a sponsor of my show, I am open to that conversation. So if anybody's listening,
Or if Max would like to be a client of Maddox, and
there we go.
Their name and platform every 2 years, maybe we could help them get there.
Yeah, or if Brian Cox is listening and wants to come on the show as a guest, I'm down for all these things. I'm really into it.
We're setting a lot of seeds today.
We're setting a lot of seeds. Yeah, we're very, very stealthy here, Josh. Very stealthy.
But no, I think that's it. The thing about this world so I mean, I look, I bought a computer not because there wasn't a lot of college programs for what I do.
Yeah.
This is pre UX certs, or there was computer science and there was graphic design. And then somewhere in the middle, there was this thing happening with web and with users and with engagement. And that all was flourishing and growing in the early 2000s. And so, I mean, I bought a computer because I saw the Matrix and I just thought it was amazing. I was studying architecture. Cool. And we weren't in CAD yet. That was like year 3 at the time. So,
yeah,
and then I got this internship. I was a webmaster. I used Netscape Composer. That was what they said to use. It's both an aging cue now and kind of embarrassing, but then I went home and at night I couldn't stop. I was learning Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, Flash, all of it. I just loved it. I couldn't get enough. So why I do this and what drives me, I guess, is just this ornate kind of love of creation, right? Whether it's vectorizing and making a more digital version of a photo that I love, or that's stuff I did 20 years ago. I still do it for work now, but for fun. But no, as that's all kind of evolved, there is this innate just drive of like connecting with people and leveraging, whenever we can drive brands towards authenticity without cheese is really, I think, a win. And then marrying that to digital. If you're in e-commerce, if you're in Amazon.com is your hub, but you have, thousands of spokes out there forming impressions and perceptions with your audience and your consumers. And there's tremendous lift there. I love thinking through the organism of the whole being and not just the one-sided, what's the messaging on this billboard going to say? So it's okay to do, it's not that's not a slight against the messaging on that billboard. It's thinking through what is it intended to do and where will the user of the interpreter of that message, where will they go on their journey with your brand that you just started with that billboard? So really just thinking kind of, big picture. And, with Matic, there's ambitions of, getting into content, further than what's on the web or the app or the email, and going deeper into, real connective tissue and, even to the extent of, maybe there's an ambition of film down the line someday.
Nice.
It's not a today capability, but it's a hope.
Sure. There you go.
There's stories to tell. At the end of the day, we're all just telling stories, and even an application, it's a story with transactional moments. So that's kind of the philosophy, and I think that's kind of the thing I'm really, really passionate about with what we do here.
Awesome. What's the thing that you're most proud of in your life?
Okay, now I'm going to default to my daughter. 100%. Yeah, I mean,
of course.
Just again, I had kind of an interesting childhood, so the one that she's having is far different, and I think that's something I'm really, really proud of, being able to provide and be there in that way. And then, I think it's okay to feel kind of proud about a lot of things throughout your life and a lot of moments. There's been, it's really easy. We're all really good at saying what we're not proud of, or at least feeling it. Maybe not saying it, actually, but we're all really good and in our heads constantly. I think you talked about this in another one, the inner voice. And I find myself thinking about mine and how much I wish I could strangle it sometimes. But there's little moments that I'm proud of. I'm proud that, I'm in my mid 40s, and I decided after a unrelated health event, I decided that where I couldn't drink alcohol for a little while because my body needed some time to not process high fat and alcohol and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I decided that the doctor said, give it 2 months and then you're good. And I'm at 11 months. And
Nice.
because I liked it, I was like, the energy I feel, you literally, I think Dax says this because,
yeah,
he can't resist. He's usually looking for a good opening to mention his struggle with his
this is
addiction.
one of the core parts of his personal brand is recovering, not proud, but addict, who is very out loud about that.
So one of the times he said it, and he said, yeah, you wake up feeling like your 11-year-old self. And holy geez, I just said holy geez. Is that not true? Like,
I can experience.
It's so true. And so that's what it is. It's, it's really nothing else was a major driver than, wow, I feel good. So there's all types of things to feel proud about.
Yeah.
When you look at it, so yeah, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of being able to look at things, the little micro moments that kind of only matter to me. And I'm like, yeah, good job, man.
Yeah, there you go. Like that. What's something you're afraid that might actually be true about you?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one for sure.
It's my therapy question.
Yeah, therapy question. Afraid that might be true, that I can be a selfish asshole. That's something I'm afraid that can be true. That, when you're, and I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with my daughter's mother, but we are divorced. We have realigned, and that's going great. But we've been apart for 5 years. And the thing that I think about, because so when I have my daughter half time, we've always been 50-50. And so I do a lot of single dadding when Sienna's over here. We've, again, blended it more, but she has her house, I have mine, and Sienna goes between the two still to this day. So I do a lot of single dadding. And on these nights I am with her, if work is busy, I'm in my head, I have the anxiety, but I still spend the time with her. But when I put her to bed, I can't wait to get her to bed some nights so that I can get back to the couch, grab the laptop, and do the 3 or 4 things that are causing me anxiety because I haven't done them yet.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the mornings, it's a very similar situation. I'll try and get up before her. And if she happens to wake up early too, I'm like almost annoyed that 20 minutes more I needed before I was ready to be a participant in her life. So yeah, I'm afraid I'm a selfish asshole.
Because everything I was listening to what you're saying, I'm like, I would love to tell you that doesn't resonate for me as well, but it totally does. And we have a 2-year-old as well that gets up even earlier. Our 7-year-old is like a teenager at this point. She does, but sometimes I'll go, I could really use this hour to blank, or even like meditate or exercise. It's like, oh wait, I hear him kicking the wall up there. I guess it's time. But you know what's funny about this, Josh? Isn't it funny how this is I'm just going to riff this out. It's so funny how humans work, because you can read articles on what, like, people that are like do hospice work, whatever, they say, what are the things that people say they wish they had more of in their life, and the things that they wish they had less of. On that list every single time is more time with loved ones.
Yep.
And there's not arguably a better time for loved ones when your kid's like 7 or 2, because they actually really just like love you for you without, I mean, yes, they want, at 7, our daughter likes some transactional things, but overall she's like, she's like happy to see me and all those things. Isn't it funny how we know that to be true, yet in the moment our brain is like, oh, but it'd be nice to have that extra hour for that email that may or may not make a difference, may or may not make you that penny. And at the end of the day, probably you'll never remember, but you might remember that morning and the special time you had with your daughter. I just find that fascinating, because everything you said so resonates for me too. I'm the same way. I'll go, oh, I can't wait to get them to bed so I can blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what did I do last night that was so important? I don't even remember. Right. Like, did it really move the needle? But like, spending time with them. So I really appreciate you saying that. Another thing that we share, I would assert that most parents would probably, working parents would say something similar to that, where you're like, oh, I love these kids, but like, But it's such a, I don't know, it's a good example of something that we all know to be true, that stuff doesn't actually matter, but then in the moment we make it mean so much.
Yeah. I mean, and you're spot on that. I think this is a very threaded, probably mindset that a lot of just parents that work have. It's not entrepreneurs only. And it's easy to feel like it's an entrepreneurial thing of like, I'm building, I'm doing this. I have salaries and people's mortgages to think about. And I've, got to be on this thing or that thing. And it's urgent. It's very easy to think that, but it's also probably being felt by everybody who has a job who's like, I'm on this project. We're finishing this, quarterly reviews are coming up. I really want to show X. And there's all, and like everybody is kind of, I heard this quote it's not a quote, it was just a statement, but everybody is sort of fighting for their lives in a lot of ways, whether it's, cruise control moments for sure. But if you work in tech, you've either gone through or afraid of a layoff right now. And they're fighting for their lives, right? Like what was normal yesterday is now unknown. And as parents, terrifying. I've always felt hyper resourceful. Like if when I was at Deloitte, I never feared layoff because I knew in the background, I was like, well, I could just turn on my independent mindset again and go. But when I was at Deloitte, I gave it my all, right? Or it's the same with the startups. That's even a better example where you might worry about layoffs. But yeah, we're all facing it. So it is nice to know you're not alone in it. But again, the inner voice, it's only talking to you about you, and it knows everything.
That's right.
So that's usually the one I'm contending with of like, even down to bedtime. Like I know logically that there's a reason a bedtime is usually earlier for the kid than for us. It's part of development. It's part of their brain growing, their body doing what, even though they're energized. It's good parenting to have a regular bedtime, right? But there's other times when we'll be getting home from school, it's 5:30, 6 o'clock, and she'll be like, let's go for a bike ride. And I'm already thinking, I got to do dinner. I got to pack lunch tomorrow. And I want to have a little relaxing time with you. And then I want to get you to bed. I got 2.5 hours to do all that. I don't think there's time for bike riding right now.
Yeah.
So, but I could be like, oh, she could just stay up late. We could still do all those things. So it's this counter, it's guilt, logic. It's all the things kind of working against or for one another.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing all that. Thanks for being, authentic and honest about it. I really, like I said, I really resonate with so much of that. So Josh, as we wrap up for today, how do you see the world?
As I get older, I see it differently than I used to.
Me too.
You hit on it just a moment ago that, we all, from your guests, that like we all kind of share in a lot of common ways. There's a lot of commonalities amongst all of us. So the individualism of me is probably a little less important than it was in my 20s. And it's my world's shifting to more of an us view. And I see the world as in a very fragile place. I think we're all working to do our parts, and there's some blatant working against us happening. And I want to be on the side that leaves it a little better than we found it if I can. And yeah, I think it's concerning to see if you really look at, I listen, you and I both listen to a lot of the same podcasts. I add the daily to my routine and a few others.
Me too. Yep.
I like the daily. It's world, it's global. It's not, CNN politics all the time or Fox, whatever it is they do all the time. It's global. It's just, this is happening in Russia. This is happening. And I wonder if we're at our infancy or at our decline when I think about what we're doing. And it could be both. We're certainly not in the middle of this is the era of everything is great and sunshine. And
no,
we're in an interesting place as a society and as a planet. And I'm hopeful. So I guess short answer is I'm hopeful. Parents like yourself and kids like Sienna make me hopeful. So that's my daughter, Sienna.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Josh. Well, I'm sure people are going to listen. They're going to want to know more about you, what you're up to, your background, just connect with you. As you can tell, Josh is a great dude. I really appreciate the conversation. Man, it's just, this doesn't happen all the time. I feel like I'm like just talking, like I'm having a conversation with myself about, I'm like, yep, we even listen to the same podcast. We have a daughter the same age. We both like run our own. I'm not, in marketing, I don't have an agency, but I like a lot of the things you talked about. Like what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and find out more about you if they'd like to?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Josh Fuller is really an easy one. I'm always happy to, there's a lot of filters for the sales folks out there, no offense, but always happy to hear from people that way. And then our site is maticdigital.com. It's easy.
Nice.
Those are kind of my two primaries.
Cool.
I don't leverage social as much as I probably should, but
but
I do leverage LinkedIn quite a bit, and we try and post some thoughtful things out there pretty regularly.
I'm going to do a PSA for Josh, and it's also a PSA for myself. I don't think either of us are looking for 15 to 75 hot leads for agencies or coaching per week. I'm laughing about the LinkedIn comment. Hey, everybody's, I relate to everybody is like, they're just doing their job, but like, I'm with you. The filters, the amount of noise on LinkedIn now, and I could probably do a whole episode. I need to have somebody on my podcast to talk about LinkedIn. The amount of noise out there for business owners, it's a little overwhelming now. Like it's pretty unbelievable.
It is. It's really interesting. It's a hard place to know. First of all, it doesn't feel like a good place for me if I'm interested in working with a brand or talking to a client. If I think I've got something insightful for X company, I don't. LinkedIn does not feel like the place for me to go message that person unless I'm already well. Then there's something like that.
Because they're not going to know. They're going to knock. It's going to come across as automated or bots, which I'm a believer in automation, and I'm a tech person too, so I get all that. But yeah, like the cutting, it's just there's so much noise to cut through.
There's so much noise, and yeah, I do get a lot of leads, inquiries. How many do I want? So I will sign up on that PSA, and we have a nearshore capability ourselves. We have partners in Mexico City, designers and software engineers.
Yeah.
I would say maybe slow down out there marketers on hitting people on LinkedIn for let's partner and we have this or that offshore technology. That I get a ton of those.
Yeah.
Close to 6 to 10 a day.
Yeah. I'm similar. I get the coaching industry is filled with this stuff because the coaching industry is it's a fast growing market, but there's a lot of people who do it. It's a low barrier to entry. So you get a lot, in a way, it's kind of like digital marketing. Some way, like there is a lower barrier to entry because anybody can go, I'm a digital marketer. It doesn't mean they're good at it. It's the same in a lot of industries, but just some of those offers, I'm just like, just because, and I had the joke, and we'll wrap up with this one and get some words of wisdom, because this is not the words of wisdom, but I always like to make the joke that like, we're both human is not enough for us to connect. Like I live in the New York metro area. People are like, oh, I see we're both in the New York metro area. I'm like, yeah, great. 20 million people here. I don't know how that's enough for us to be connected. Like if we know, and I'm with you, like if I know some, like you and I believe are connected, we definitely will be. If there was somebody that knew you as a first level connection and they hit me up, I would probably connect with them because I'm just like, oh yeah, Josh, great guy, I had on my podcast. But like these third plus connections that they're just selling, I'm like, no. No,
LinkedIn's it's an interesting place because it's losing its authenticity, I think, and connecting quote unquote real business people with other quote unquote real business people.
Yeah.
It's it's really interesting. I reported a soft report. It was just like I accepted a connection invite and immediately could recognize that, oh, this is not normal.
You breathe oxygen. So do I. We need to connect.
Right. And the check, and just, I started getting inundated with messages. So I was just like, hey, it was within a day. And I unlinked and it asked me why. And I said, spamming or phishing or something. And then I got a response from LinkedIn a day later that was like, well, we looked into it. We didn't see that.
Because they're paying.
Well,
they're a paying customer of LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, LinkedIn, I'd love to talk to LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, so the other side of this coin, I would say, is if anybody's listening that would like to connect on LinkedIn, I love that. So I get hits all the time where people are like, hey, I heard your episode of Josh. I really like this, or I really like that. I'd love to just connect. Yeah. That I'm down for. Because it means you're a human. You've done something. Something's resonated. Like you've made it, like for me as a podcaster, that's super personal. I'm sure for you, you're like, hey, I heard you on Jason's podcast. really
Mhm.
like that conversation about this. I'll connect with those people all day, even if they're
Right.
selling something. I'm like, yeah, cool. Like you did a little bit of work here, or you somehow got me outside of like what my title is on LinkedIn. Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll have to do a second podcast on bitching about LinkedIn and music.
Well, let's do a focused one.
We'll do a focused one.
Talking shit with cool people.
Talking shit about LinkedIn with cool
Yeah.
people. I like it.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of other guests that I know I could source up, like some are friends, and so just like be like, hey, I'm gonna do a panel discussion.
I feel like
And
it's a panel. Yeah.
It's gonna be like an old like stitch and bitch session. We're just gonna bitch about this, and we'll get like 0 downloads, but it'll be fun for us to do it anyway and record it. Josh, thanks so much for being on today. I really appreciate it. So good to get to know you in this way, and I'm sure we'll have you back on. Last thing, tradition on the show, love to have my guests leave with some short and sweet words of wisdom you'd like the audience to remember and incorporate, hopefully.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, just I think if you're building something, be diligent with it, give it time. There's peaks and valleys. I'm very familiar and coaching myself on those moments, to remember the good times when you're in the bad and vice versa to some extent. So I think just that's the best I can do right now, because that's where I'm at. Looking for just tried and true. Hey, this is who you are. This is who your people are. This is the way your industry works, and being able to listen to that at the right time.
Yeah.
Really easy in the high times to know that stuff and to nonchalantly, but when you're looking at a quarter that didn't perform the way it should have, or a client op that slipped away when it seemed assured, you're not especially cursed. It's just the ebb and flow. Everything has something to teach us. So
yeah. Thanks, Josh.
Really
wish you the very best, you and your little lady, all the Matic and everything. We'll have you back on again soon. Have an awesome rest of the spring and enjoy the weather out there in Denver.
Yeah, Jason, you too. In New York, yeah. So
in New York, it's very hot here today. Similar 80s.
Oh man, yeah, but humid.
Well,
enjoy it though.
Yep. Thanks so much, Josh.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.